everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns, powered by Second Amendment Foundation and brought to you by Patriot Patch Company, VZGrips, MAF Corporation, and Primary Arms. This show offers commentary on all of the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew Rosier, and I'm joined again by, well, this time, a series of rats. I think that's good.
It's me. If I had a soundboard, I'd do an echo where all the rats say hello at once.
Something like, hello, from the rats.
Something exactly like that.
Yeah, that would be a good thing. So how's it been?
It's been pretty good. It's been busy and tumultuous. I think that's the word.
Yeah, terramolus?
That's a terrible.
I believe the word is actually tiramisu.
Tiramisu.
Yeah. But so yeah, we've been gone for a while. I have a good excuse. I know I do this often, but not usually for this long. So of course I was representing CRS Firearms Matt Hoover in the auto keycard trial in Jacksonville, and that was a multi-week straight trial where it was just 9-10 hour days straight. Just in the courtroom, and then prepping for the next day. It was a lot of work, and as a lot of you guys know, that did not go the way it should have. So we're going to talk a little more about that, but worry not, there are still options, and there are things that we have on the table, and both myself and Mr. Hoover feel very strongly about this case. So we'll cover that for just a little bit, but first, woof. So yeah, I guess first up, let's talk about this. It's received a fair amount of media coverage, and a lot of people on YouTube posting their opinions of what happens, of course, before any actual information is released on what actually happened at the trial. But it was a long trial where we successfully got all of the government witnesses to admit that basically the thing didn't fall under the definition of a machine gun.
Yep.
So the thing to understand here is that he was charged only under one clause of the machine gun definition, which was combination of parts designed and intended for use in converting a weapon to fire automatically. On cross-examination, myself and lawyers for the other defendant successfully got the ATF and every other government witness to admit that the auto key card was a single homogeneous piece of steel with a drawing on it. We covered that the depth of the drawing was about 1/1000th of an inch. It came out on cross that the DXF file that was originally drawn for this could not even be used in a laser cutter because it had open loops. It came out that the government agents, the only one that they ever saw working was cut out by the ATF's own expert, who admitted he did not follow the lines and that it wasn't working correctly.
That's a clown world.
It's so in federal criminal court, it's a very uphill battle for defendants, and it really shouldn't be that way, but that's just how it is. And we were all thinking, well, this is obvious. But again, a lot went into this. We fought incredibly hard. Matt was happy with his representation, and of course, I'm talking to him constantly. And he's excited about the appeal because we're not letting this go. But at the end of the day, the jury convicted the owner of the auto keycard website of all 12 counts, and Matt Hoover was convicted on 5 counts. So he was found not guilty on several counts, which itself is also interesting.
Right.
Which was the concern, right? The concern is the government that can just keep saying machine gun, machine gun, machine gun, machine gun. And I guess that can be hard for people to unhear, but it was like systematically demonstrated and proven. It was a total clown show that the thing was a single chunk of steel.
Right. And the whole case was, frustrating to hear unfold, the little tidbits of information we had seen leading up to the trial. Like the ATF was going to say this is a combination of parts. And the whole time it's like, man, this doesn't make any sense. Like how are they going to pull this off? And then the details throughout the trial, like, oh, they didn't pull that off. They just sat there and straight up said one part is a combination of parts. What about it? Just like the law says this, but we would prefer it didn't, because it would be devastating to our case if we had stuck with what the law actually says.
Right.
And then to top off that frustration, right? Of course, there's the frustration that the jury for some reason sided with the ATF, which was ridiculous. Yep. And then the frustration then on top of that was in the usual sort of clickbait fashion, everybody sort of wanted to have the first video about the results of the trial, and there was a bunch of people just like completely wrong conclusions drawn about the trial and all sorts of like patently bad information. Right. But there not to say that every video was bad. I didn't hate the one that Mark Smith did where his analysis, which he hadn't of course seen nearly is all the information. So some of what he was doing was speculation, but I think he was correct when he made the analogy of effectively what happened here is if somebody was selling a paper cup and they were saying, oh, this paper cup is a machine gun, you can put it in the AR-15, it'll totally work as a machine gun, even though there's no way the paper cup can fit in an AR, even though there's no way it would work as a machine gun possibly. Because you said it could be, and because some ATF agent could cut along lines that weren't even the lines drawn on this paper cup, and then make it cause a gun to malfunction because you said it was a machine gun, therefore it's designed and intended, which is just insane.
It's
because I think we've talked about this before on the show that if the definition of machine gun is going to include things that can't fire a bullet, right? They're things that aren't firearms. Right. They're not capable of firing bullets, and they're not even frames or receivers for that weapon. That certainly it should have to be things that are actually capable of converting something instead of something. It's
separated out. The statute is separated out into very specific subparts. Right. So when it's talking about something that is not a firearm or a frame or receiver, it's talking about like there's two clauses. One is a single part, designed and intended solely and exclusively to cause a weapon to function automatically. And then there's the other one, which is a combination of parts designed and intended. And I fought passionately over this. There's no way a homogeneous piece of steel.
It's not a combination of parts.
It cannot be more than one part. Can't be. And the fight that we were having was basically the other side's argument was that one object can be multiple parts. It's like, well, yes, but the object wouldn't be homogeneous, right? Like when you think of like a music box, right? That's one object, but it has multiple parts in it. And this was, you might hold it in your hand, but there's screws and things holding it together. This is homogeneous.
It's like it's raw stock, right? It's like it's a bar of aluminum. It's literally in this case like a flat piece of sheet metal. A bar of aluminum is no more an M16's receiver than this card was a machine gun by any means. And then the part that just boils my blood is that down in the nitty-gritty details, this thing wasn't designed and intended to convert a gun to be a machine gun. The thickness of the steel was wrong to make it work as a lightning. Well, like that alone,
the manufacturer never called, and this came out, never called out thickness. It was never specified. He just handed over the DXF and told them to put it on whatever. It was cheapest.
Like it's on the wrong thickness of steel, right? It wouldn't work as a machine gun. The actual lines, the drawing on the thing weren't right. It wouldn't work as a machine gun. And it just infuriates me that the ATF can stand there in front of a jury and be like, yes, this thing that was designed and intended to be a machine gun, which actually wasn't. Like the only design and intent they can point to is the fact that they were like sort of tongue in cheek about advertising it sometimes. Right. But you can like if you tongue in cheek advertise a paper cup, does that make it a machine gun? Because I don't think so. It can't work that way. You have to materially alter the thing that's actually sold to make it one. Right. It's very, very frustrating. And from everything I've seen and heard so far, it seems like an extremely strong case was made for appeals during the trial. Because, especially if you get the government's witnesses to come right out and say, like, no, this didn't actually work as a machine gun. no, this didn't, no, I didn't actually cut along the lines.
And they didn't recover in all of the resources they spent traveling around the country recovering these things. You know how many they recovered that were actually, cut out and manufactured into something?
None.
Zero. But they found one guy who worked at a tool and die shop who and this is one of the questions I asked of the ATF's, expert who had manufactured one to his own drawing, right? These are lines. There's lines on here, and these lines have thickness, right? And he was like, well, yeah, of course. I said, so how did you know where to cut? On the outside, inside, or along the middle? And you know what his response was? I followed the line.
Huh.
And then the guy who worked at the tool and die shop was like, oh no, of course. Who tried to make one of these, that one of their witnesses says, I cut to the outside of the line first. It didn't do anything. And then I cut to the center of the line and it didn't do anything. And then I cut and obliterated the line and it didn't do anything.
And I mean, it's because the thickness is wrong, right? Because if you're familiar with how a lightning link works, it is like on the ragged edge, dimensionally speaking, it has to be very, very close to perfect in order to have a chance of working correctly. Because it's a very backwards way of making things work in the first place.
The thing about an actual lightning link is that it's not really a two-dimensional part.
Correct.
It has to have a certain amount of flex, and they have to be tuned. Which
tuned to individual disconnectors.
Yes, and individual, because guess what? When these bolt carriers were made, when they were cutting them back, those were an arbitrary length. That wasn't really a mil spec, right? It was they just wanted to cut back the trip on the back of the bolt.
Cutting it back far enough it wouldn't touch an actual autosear.
Right? So this whole thing, anyway, I just figured you guys would want me to break the silence on that. Of course, my client authorized me to talk about it publicly, and we're going upstairs. There's no two ways about it. It's got to go upstairs. And I will tell you, he was such a champ about it. It was really, say whatever you will about that guy. He was a champ. When, he was really confident that he was going to be acquitted. And then when the verdict came down, he just looks at me and he says, well, guess I might get my name on a 11th Circuit case. That's balls.
That's really big.
Yeah. But I will tell you, there's a human side to all this, and having to take his jacket and his keys and everything and get in his car to drop it off to his wife and, young daughters. That's something that people don't
nothing can prepare experience.
You for that. Yeah, and
nothing can prepare you for that.
And it's truly horrible what they're doing here. Because look, whatever you think about the auto key card, I think it's clearly not a machine gun in the law, but it's certainly not a machine gun beyond a reasonable doubt. You're certainly not on clear notice that this is a prohibited article. And the reason that it's incumbent on, and the reason we have the rule of lenity, which this entire thing spits in the face on, is because the human consequence of felonious treatment of an item is so severe. It's felonious treatment is for serious things like murder and arson and things. I don't see a moral justification for a guy who stands accused of talking about a drawing on a card to then be then his family's in a position where I'm handing, giving them back their car. And I'll tell you, man, his daughter looked up at me and just said, I miss daddy. Holy shit.
Yep.
I'm never going to be the same. And I'm not going to stop fighting for him. And I mean, I can't believe just how much strength he's had through this whole thing, but it's horrifying.
Over a card, which, for the record, the ATF was so concerned about these cards that they went out of their way to collect 6 of them total and be like, the rest are fine. They don't matter.
They contacted 40 something people
Of the thousands and thousands they alleged were sold.
Yeah, they contacted 40-something people. So the first, and they had their little code names, and there's Operation Lightning Strike, right? Which is so...
That's terrible.
It's so awful. And then they had Operation Auto Keycard Retrieval, where they wandered around, picked up a handful, and then literally admitted on the stand, stopped because they determined it was not a priority. And I'll just tell you, for a week and a half, we had witnesses from the Postal Inspection Service. We had like 5 different people from the Post Inspection Service to like sitting here and say, well, they mailed them. This is his car when he went to the mailbox. Like, for all this time. And then you know how much, 2 weeks, I'm telling you. And you know how much evidence they had that this thing was a machine gun?
Like it was the one video, right? The one
seconds.
the one video where it like maybe shoots 10 rounds.
5.
5 rounds. There you
10-second video. No, without showing that the thing functions semi-automatically without it, and where the operator admits that it's malfunctioning, it's hammer follow, right. And that he didn't cut along the line. That.
Like you know, we talked about. I guess we'll get into it because I've seen a lot of people sort of misunderstand the question of like, oh, it was malfunctioning. A couple of places have reported now that, oh, they made it work by malfunctioning. Mm-hmm. So with AR-15s, they can, AR-15s can slam fire. Early in the design, it was like an actual problem.
Right.
So they resolved that by specifying harder primers for the military, and they also resolved it by making the firing pins lighter. And sometimes you can make firing pins heavier to avoid it. Sometimes you can make them lighter to avoid it. They found lightening the firing pin is what helped the AR. However, because it's still sort of on the ragged edge, like if you chamber a round in an AR and then you jack that round out, you'll notice a little kiss, kiss on the primer where the firing pin did bounce off of it, just not with much force. So you can do in an AR-15, like if you remove a disconnector from the standard AR-15 fire control group, it will do what's known as hammer follow, where the hammer follows the bolt home. That hammer will have a little extra inertia applied to the firing pin, which will give you a little bit bigger divot. So if you use extremely soft primers, or you use an extra heavy hammer spring, or maybe you lighten or heavy in your firing pin a little bit, you may get to the point that it's able to touch off a round as the gun closes with the hammer following. This is, of course, extremely dangerous, but can lead to a gun firing, as soon as the gun slams shut.
Right.
And so this is a malfunction, right? This isn't supposed to happen. And of course, maybe if you did it intentionally, there could be some conversation about whether or not that constitutes a machine gun. But it happening accidentally is a thing that can happen, right? Disconnectors can wear down if you've got a lower receiver, right? And if you've got a lower receiver where the pinholes were drilled somewhat incorrectly, you may have run into this yourself, right? I've seen it on Anderson lowers, like cheap lowers and cheap fire control groups mixed together. It can happen. Hammer follows do. And so all the ATF managed to accomplish to do with this, this quote unquote lightning link that they cut out to their own dimensions, right? So this is them making their own cutouts on this flat piece of steel, right? The drawings on that don't even matter anymore. Right. It's just a flat piece of steel. They cut out their own lines. What they managed to do is, of course, these lightning links are meant to work with an SP1 bolt carrier, which is like a way out of manufacture, something Colt made to make it so their guns wouldn't become machine guns. Right. And then people found a way around that because, of course, there's always a way to do it with an actual lightning link. But with their cutout lightning links, it wouldn't actually actuate the auto keycard cutout lightning links because the metal's too thin. So the ATF decides to use
it's just all wrong. And
right.
And everything. Like, this all came out on the stand. And guess what? He claimed to use an M16 carrier. Right. So there's just no conceivable way it was functioning as intended. And he said on the stand, was not functioning as a lightning link would be designed and intended. Right. So they ended up putting an M16 bolt carrier in a SPO1. We don't even see. That's the thing. We don't know what components were in this gun. It wasn't disclosed. They didn't show it clearly. We fought about that. And like all of these things, we fought over everything. But at the end of the day, all that got shown was them admitting that it was malfunctioning, admitting that they didn't follow the lines. And I made sure that in excruciating detail that how hammer follow functions, how a lightning link would function was shown. And that's still the result that happened. So it's a total, in my opinion, it's a miscarriage. And it's not over. That's 100% sure. It's it's ridiculous. So that's
they induced a hammer follow, right? They went through all of these steps.
And also they admitted, and I said, and how long did you spend doing it? And you blah, 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 an hour. How long would it take for you to take the disconnector out? And a few minutes. It's like
you can do it without taking the hammer out of the gun. Even come on, now.
Exactly. You drive and even guess what? That came out too. I said, wouldn't you just drive this pin halfway out and then it'd fall out of the gun? Well, that could work.
Yeah,
and then then it would be a machine gun. It's like, I don't think that. I don't know. But there is that problem, right? The way the law is written, shoots automatically is one separate definition. So if they wanted to get, but that would be a very squirrely, weaselly, slippery way to publicly interpret, which is why they've never done that. They've never publicly interpreted guns that way.
Right. Except in, like, there was one case, I think, from Washington where a guy deliberately took a disconnector out of a gun and then sold it to a guy saying, this is a machine gun. It shoots full auto now. Like, okay, idiot. Like now you've stated some sort of intent. But
well, I'm saying that's in a private, right. Either in a letter ruling or in a criminal investigation, but not like
as far as malfunctioning, no.
Yeah.
Like this happening on accident, and it's just goofball, right? That they're going to sit there and say that you can take 40 minutes to cut out this thing to save yourself the 30 seconds of taking a disconnector out.
Ridiculous.
And somehow this doesn't make all AR-15s ever machine guns because we don't have to be consistent.
Right. Exactly. Well, anyway, I promise I'll do more coverage on this. I also, and Matt has asked me to do a video of basically my closing argument because I scripted the whole thing. So I'll be able to reproduce exactly what the closing argument was so you guys can know what we argued, because there was a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking.
Oh my God, it was so frustrating to watch.
Yeah. I mean, no, that wasn't upsetting at all. All of the non-lawyers of Twitters that think they...
if I see one more person saying, oh, you should have argued Bruin. If you just argue Bruin and it goes away.
Yeah, I did.
It's
repeatedly and passionately.
Not how court works at all.
Yeah. And then, why didn't you just show this? It's like under what rule of evidence would I show that? How would I lay the foundation for, like, what witness would you use to bring that in? How would you handle the...
It's very complex. People don't realize that it's complex and perhaps on purpose, needlessly so.
No less than 5 experienced defense attorneys, all working and consulting on this together. I was asked to do a lot of the cross-examination specifically because of my expertise in the mechanics of these things. This wasn't a one-man show, right? This was a serious legal defense that was put on, and I think it should be very scary for all of you out there, and that's something that we need to get clarification in the law. Like, this needs to be reined back,
especially if you've got an FRT or whatever, right? You're that close to being railroaded for anything, right? Because FRTs are much closer to being machine guns than a flat metal card.
Well, FRTs are more than one part,
right?
Oh my God, Anyway, let's move on.
Yes.
Next up, and the ghost gun. You got
it,
Oregon. That's where the trail is. I think they got dysentery over there.
Brainworms.
They passed the law that targets ghost guns.
Their house is passed it heads to the Senate. Okay,
right.
But of course, I'm sure it will probably go through.
Yeah, 3524 in the House. So yeah, this is HB 2005. It would prohibit manufacturing, importing, selling, or transferring an undetectable firearm. Which,
of course, this might be a journalist not knowing how to read bills, but
yeah, well, who knows? This would be punishable by 10 years in prison, a $250,000 fine, or both. Prohibit possession of an undetectable firearm. For a first offense, there would be 364 days in prison, a $6,250 fine, or both. Second and subsequent convictions would mean 10 years and $250,000. Ban possession of firearms without serial numbers after September 1st, 2024.
What the fuck?
There would be defense available if the person can prove they bought the gun before this date or they willingly gave it up before being prosecuted.
That's funny.
Require gun dealers to conduct background checks before selling, giving, or transferring an unfinished frame or receiver, and ban people under 21 from possessing firearms or unfinished frames or receivers.
All of these ghost gun bans, they're like, they're of course I realize like there's a big push to focus on assault weapon and mag bans because they of course affect a lot more people, and there's momentum behind them. And I guess we got some of that later in the show.
Yes,
but I think the big focus from the gun rights groups is more there. But we already seen, I think it was Delaware's ghost gun ban get absolutely ravaged by Bruin. It got juiced, and so I think all of these sort of ghost gun bans are like complete fodder for Bruin. And I imagine they're just sort of wanting to, the gun rights groups are wanting to shake out assault weapon and mag bans first because they're sort of higher priority, however that works out. But, there's been a lot of places passing more and more ghost gun things, but like Delaware was in front of it was a Clinton or Obama appointed judge, and no, they were like, there's no historical tradition of serial numbers at all. Right. Like,
that was good.
No law in the U.S. recognized this until 1968. This is there is no tradition, and proof marks
still wasn't a requirement.
Proof marks are not the same as serial numbers.
Oh, speaking of gun law challenges, I just got notice of appearance of attorneys for the ATF. Stephen Delabach, Merrick Garland, and the Department of Justice in our pistol brace lawsuit. So that's good that they finally decided to show up. But yeah, so I think the ghost gun laws are something that they're not getting enough attention, because what's the very, very, very core of the Second Amendment right?
Of almost any right? It's the right to do it with your own two stinking hands.
Yeah, to do it. Or to even, if you are somebody who's very physically small and thus cannot imagine, making something, you have to include the right to acquire the means to exercise the right. And you have to agree that the purest way to acquire something is to fashion it yourself, right?
It's like saying that actual pen on paper done by your hand isn't First Amendment protected because it's not, you didn't pay for a license of Microsoft Word, and there's not a serial number tied to that document. Like, come on now, come on.
Yeah, we have a friend who likes to tie serial numbers to documents. But yeah, no. So I think that is something to watch. So keep an eye on this Oregon House. If you're in the Oregon, hey, do something about it, right? Your legislator, tell them to stop.
Knock it off.
Speaking about,
I guess the last thing there on serial numbers, there is that, I think it's 922K challenge.
Yeah,
where there was the guy who was murdered someone, and then after getting out for murdering someone, they then had a firearm that they took the serial number off of, thinking that would keep them from being found out.
I mean,
Then they were caught with that, and of course he got felon in possession charges, and that was upheld. But at the first level of appeals, the serial number challenge, the judge said that the federal government cannot. 922K is the requirement to have a serial number, and the prohibition on guns with defaced serial numbers.
Right.
So the funny thing about that is, if that proceeds, and I think it's on its way to appeals now. But, if that ruling is upheld, then all of these state level bans saying that, you can't have a gun without a serial number are completely in-run by the fact that it's like, this gun had a serial number that was put there. I removed it. What can they say? What can they say? Federally speaking, like everywhere speaking at that point, nationwide, it's fine to take your serial number off of your gun.
I deleted it.
And so, the 3D printer will be sitting there running in the background of the cops looking at you like, so what's going on here? And you're like, well, somebody else puts numbers on them and I take them off. That's all that I need to know.
Yeah, so does the number get there? I'll say I don't like it.
I don't like them. It's ugly.
Yeah. All right, next up, speaking of lacerations, look at my arm. I got a bandage. This is what happens if you shoot your 40 cal high power without VZGrips. I took them off for Just 1 second, and would you believe I was immediately damaged? That's why you
40
should
cal is snappy.
Yep. That's why you should go to VZGrips.com and get yourself a set of the hyena brown lacerators for your 1911.
You control snappy.
Yep. These grips are really great. They're good. They keep you from hurting yourself. That's what happened with me. And you got all the different flavors. So go and buy 3 sets real quick for me. And if you do that, well, you don't have to buy 3, but you can buy it even just 1. Use promotional code this week 15 THISWEEK15, and you will get 15% off your order. Yeah, since 2003, the reputation, quality, consistency, and you can read all this stuff on their website. It's available on there. And I want to real quick check the clearance section. See if they got any neat miscellaneous. Ooh, an effect military maintenance tool. You can maintain your entire military with that tool.
That's true. I can't believe they made it so small.
Yep.
Where's the bat to hit them over the head with?
So anyway, guys, VZGrips.com, promotional code this week, 15. It'll be nice. All right. So, I mean, we've talked quite a bit about the Tyre Nichols murder.
That's true.
Here on this fine program. Well, we got the first set of results for the guy who hit him with a stun gun. No charge, free. Did it for free. So yeah, the former. So of course he's not a cop anymore. The former Memphis police officer who hit Tyre Nichols with a stun gun during a traffic stop that preceded the brutal beating by other officers who won't be charged criminally. So this was the guy at the very beginning of the video, right? Who very aggressively and violently pulls him out of the car for little to no reason and then stuns him. Nichols' slaying was one in a string of violent encounters between police and black people that have spurred protests and renewed debate about police brutality. Of course, the other 5 were charged with second-degree murder. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I'm not so. I'm unsurprised, which may be depressing to say. I'm generally unsurprised that he, as a cop, wouldn't get strung up on this, because like in order to get strung up on something like this, being a cop, you kind of have to kill someone, or because it sort of was like blatantly unnecessary force, and that sort of only makes it so they don't have a job anymore. It doesn't really mean they get in any trouble for it.
Yeah. So
he has to go work at a different police department down the road instead.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what happens. Yeah. Hemphill, who was white, was the one that got off with no charges. Was fired February 3rd after an internal Memphis Police Department investigation showed he violated multiple department policies for his role in the January 7 arrest of Nichols, who died in a hospital 3 days later. The 5 other officers pleaded not guilty.
Okay. I hadn't realized they'd pled not guilty, all of them. That's gonna be fun.
Well, I mean, what else are they gonna do?
I guess plea out to something like, oh, it was manslaughter and not murder. Plead down to jaywalking.
So yeah, that's something. We're certainly going to keep an eye on that one. It's becoming more often that it's made a public spectacle when the police, violently victimize Americans. It's still not very often that the policeman get to go to the special cage that they want us to go to for everything. So, special cage for policeman. Is that ideologically inconsistent? I think it might be.
What, wanting them to go to the cage?
Yeah.
No.
Specifically not in the case of murderers, but if I have a general and non-particularized desire that all of them go to the cage, is that ideologically inconsistent?
It depends. So the way that I would want to square that is, the question of if all cops are bad or whatever. For me, it's one for the ages. For me, it sort of ends at, think of how many examples you've seen of cops using their station to stop something that they see that they know is wrong. It's like you're a cop that believes in the Second Amendment. How many ATF field offices have you raided? 0? That's odd. If you're a cop, right? Cops have jurisdiction. Cops have jurisdiction to at least do something about it, right?
I mean, sometimes they have. They nailed that one who was stealing wine.
But he was stealing wine, right?
Yeah.
Like you're a cop who thinks that pistol braces are protected by the Second Amendment or whatever, right? You think the pistol brace rule is wrong. How many ATF field offices have you cordoned off, or cops have all sorts of insane powers, right? Like they can do like close off all of the streets, close off all of the streets and make it impossible for the ATF guys to get to their desks.
Rezone it rural and then fine them for the building.
Right. It doesn't even have to be malicious, but like if you wanted to be a little bit malicious, like arrest them for conspiracy to violate people's rights or whatever. So until
interesting supremacy challenges though.
Yeah, but you know what? That's for lawyers to figure out. It's not for them to figure out. Like
it would be a fun thing to figure out.
like you see cops act with wild abandon when we're the targets of their wild abandon, and they're like, oh, lawyers will figure it out down the road. Yeah, like I want to see qualified immunity in a government versus government case.
Yeah, no, it's like let's see how far this 1983 action can go.
And so that's a sort of my thing there is that, you know, insofar as they have station to be able to stand up for people's rights, they very often don't. And if this happens once or twice, then whatever. But if it like literally never happens in the favor of the people who are being victimized, then that makes you complicit with the abusers. And so if you get to a point where like you generally want you generally want to view cops as being a complicit with badness, then wanting to see them put in the cages that they would have no problem with you being put in doesn't seem so bad anymore. Yeah.
The other, and so just to kind of touch on that before we get a bunch of, undergraduate pre-law majors in the comments talking about
fuck you guys. Fuck you guys.
Fuck you guys. The general rule would be, state and local law enforcement cannot actively thwart federal law enforcement, but they can just not help, right? And I think that's what really shows in a rights respecting police department versus one that does not, is their willingness to help with not just ATF but other federal agencies, because their capabilities are very limited when they don't have local law enforcement doing the groundwork.
And not helping them is one thing. Not helping them and being very, very public about it is in the rare cases when that does happen, needs to be as visible as possible. Like just put out a press release, right, and talk to your journalist pool, media pool, or whatever, and be like, yeah, we're not helping the ATF because we think that they're wrong.
You know what would be like a big cash money thing that a police chief could do? It's like every time they got a letter requesting help in investigation or something, they like posted it on the police Instagram and just like put meme stuff on it.
More of this, please. We need.
They're just like, stop calling us. That would be very 100% cash money, and they'd be completely within their rights to do that.
And that particular cop in that particular instance, you don't get to go in the cage. You get to be out of the cage. You have to keep doing that.
Yeah, no, you got to keep doing that. You got to keep doing that. And I mean, the first sheriff that does that, the first elected sheriff that does that, I promise I will donate to your campaigns for the rest of your life. So shoot me an email with proof. But all right, next up. So I think this is the third time there's been a major challenge to California's 10-day purchase waiting period. Of course, there was a big one that got denied cert at the Supreme Court, but was looking pretty promising. That was the Sylvester v. Becerra case that was involving an individual who had already owned multiple firearms, and it was declined to be revisited or visited by the Supreme Court. Well, now post-Bruin, groups are suing in San Diego to overturn that same waiting period. So the lawsuit filed Monday claims that a right delayed is a right denied, and that the 10-day waiting period is enforced even when a state database can confirm a person is eligible to buy a gun within minutes of submitting an application. The suit names California Attorney General Rob Bonta as lead defendant. So This will be interesting, right? The landscape is very different than it was in those previous cases. It is still the Ninth Circuit. So,
does California have a permit to purchase at all?
I forgot.
I don't remember. My point being, waiting periods in states where there's permit to purchase are like pants on head, house on fire, don't care, stupid. Like, right. Wow, that's dumb. Because the notion anytime that, me being from Illinois, we're familiar with our way too long, like 3-day waiting period. And like the joke that's made every time at every gun store everywhere in the state is, I'll be back in 3 days when I'm not so angry I'm going to kill someone. Like, it's just so stupid, right? Like, oh, I'm so angry now that I'm going to go through all this paperwork and buy a gun, even though I've got like 1 million back at my house. Right. And that in 3 days, I'm not going to be mad enough to murder someone anymore.
Yeah,
like that's
I needed that new one. I needed the specific one that's for that.
I needed the murder special.
The one that was marketed for that.
The one that I literally just bought, because that's the best gun to do a crime with, is one that was just purchased, because they won't even be looking for that.
Yeah.
Like, they won't be going around to gun stores in the area saying, was anybody in here? They don't do that. They never do that.
That's would be ridiculous.
Like, that's not like easy evidence to be used against you later. No. But like, so on its face, like, maybe this stops people who are thinking, who have ideations, right? I hear
that's the one thing that it actually
right. So for people, for a person who doesn't already have a gun, it might make sense. But in a state where you've got a permit to purchase, right? You've already gone through like your 90 days waiting to get this stupid permit or whatever, right? And so now that you have the permit, presumably you have a gun or can get a gun, or you've waited 90 days already. Right. If you were feeling suicidal and didn't stop being suicidal after 90 days, I don't think another week's going to make a difference. But and again, like, it's another one of those things where like they put criminal penalties on people who don't do things instead of like, there's a high road here that could easily be taken where you could make it as simple as require gun sellers ask a question like, how are you feeling? How would you rate your mental health? Yeah. And they make you wait 3 days if you say it's not good. Like, there's a million different ways they could tackle this that have a chance of being helpful besides just being a burden, and then criminal liability for people who really don't need to face criminal liability.
Well, so the funny thing is they always want to pretend that this is going to be helpful in addressing violent crime, when even though I feel like the self-harm prevention aspect of it was a secondary unintended result.
Correct. It's justification after the fact.
But they won't even actually engage with that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they have to force this public safety narrative.
Right. It's about stopping. It's about stopping the crims from doing the crimes.
Yeah. And of course, it's worked exactly 0 times. And that's why it was so interesting looking at these states that have waiting periods. And there was recently data that came out that referred to crime guns.
Right.
And it was guns that were used in a violent crime. And guys, a little cheat code if you're an anti-gun person trying to push fake statistics. Self-harm with a firearm is violent crime with a so and it went down into like, oh, what guns were they buying? And guess what? The only crimes that's committed with brand new guns is self-harm. And we actually found out that in California, the overwhelming majority of these guns that were used for self-harm were revolvers. And that's because, and then, you're like, okay, but why is that? And then you look a little deeper and it's like, oh no, they're literally just going into the gun shop and buying the cheapest one that they can find. Because in California, that would turn out to be a revolver.
Yeah.
And most of the time. Like, you get fascinating data, right? That is then that you can actually learn something from.
You could use that to guide public policy at some rate.
Yes, you could actually learn something from, and then they torture it into, look at all the violent crime we saw. It's like,
no, you fucking didn't.
No, you didn't. Man, you know what you did? You found out that old white men, when they get very sad, turn to the first tourist they see to do something bad. Like, that's what you found out. Congratulations. And it's interesting data, but it's also unsurprising, right?
Right. I mean, it all is one of those things where, like, yeah, you hear it and it makes sense.
Right. Anyway, but these lawsuits are important. Speaking of lawsuits are important, Second Amendment Foundation, as you all know, is a channel partner. If you want to support their work, you can go to bit.ly/SAFbusters. That's my special code so that they know I was being a good boy. But for real, guys, you might want to check them out. They're a good group. For nearly 50 years, the Second Amendment Foundation has been fighting for your Second Amendment rights, having been involved in over 250 cases with an active litigation load of over 40 lawsuits. That's a big load. SAF has the expertise and experience necessary to fight government overreach and challenge unconstitutional laws like the ones we're talking about right now. SAF, winning firearms freedom one lawsuit at a time. To learn more or donate, check the link in the description below or go to bit.ly/SAFbusters. And I will say, this is the only national group that actually materially reached out and wanted to help with the cases that I've been involved in. So good on them for that. And they also, I think, they made me a adjunct scholar because I'm so smart. They're like, this guy read a lot of book. They don't know I can't read.
Don't never let them know.
No, it's just Microsoft Sam, man. It really helps. Next, actual headline. They're making it so easy. Here we go. I'm going to read it. I'm going to put it up. Colorado's gay governor signs gun control bills into law in wake of Club Q shooting.
They went for it. He went straight for it.
Yeah, they know we're going to put the emphasis for some reason. It's like, are we treating them like normal people or not? Like, why? But anyway,
make up your mind.
Yeah, make up your mind. You can't have it both ways, unless they can.
Then okay.
Yeah, in which case, fine. I'm going to keep treating them like normal people and not call attention to it every 5 seconds. As the U.S. continues to grapple with gun violence, Colorado has joined several other states in passing gun control legislation. The state's out. Democratic Gov. Jared Polis signed 4 such bills on Friday, 5 months after the massacre at Club Q. I do also love how every single gun control event has to be measured in time from a mass casualty event.
Yes.
So we're raising the age to buy a gun from 18 to 21, and that's a good idea, right? Because people who are economically disadvantaged, they're the ones that are most likely to be violently victimized. And so systematically, people who are living on their own between the ages of 18 to 21 generally have the best job they're ever going to get in their life.
Yeah, they're making like 7 figures at least.
Yeah, 7, 8 figures, and they're going to be living in the best neighborhoods. So they do not need to have the guns. We need to save the guns for us older people.
Yes.
So this is a good step. It creates a 3-day waiting period between buying a firearm and then getting it. It expands the state's red flag law, and it removes certain legal protections for companies if their guns have defects. And look, let's read. Today, we are taking some important steps to help make Colorado one of the 10 safest states and building upon the ongoing work to make Colorado communities safer. Last year, I was proud to sign a comprehensive public safety plan of action into law to put Colorado on track to becoming one of the 10 safest states in the nation. And this legislation today will improve public safety and reduce gun violence. I thank the bill sponsors for bringing this common sense legislation to my desk. Whatever, dude.
It's bad. So the thought that's always struck me is that it's an interesting cornerstone between statistics and then the way the courts view things and the Constitution's written is another one of the corners that meet up there, as well as the pro-gun advocacy side. It's specifically the things you just spoke to, really, where statistically speaking, restrictions on 18 to 21-year-olds would have some positive impact on reducing the number of shootings, of course, while also disarming the people who would then most be likely victims of those shootings.
Yeah, but
while the Constitution and courts are like, unquestioned. Like every time that this has been looked at, it's the Constitution and courts have been very, very clear. I guess except in the case of Florida, but that one's getting reviewed.
Well, aggressively mishandled.
Right. Yeah. I believe it was like that circuit itself decided on their own they were going to en banc it. So
right.
That's usually a sign that something went very awry.
Yeah, they had a time.
It's a very interesting cornerstone where it's like a gun safety policy, quote unquote, that probably would have measurable impact, that the courts are like, hell no, that's never going to happen. And then, just as strong but we must save lives justification going for it has against it.
Right.
And so it sort of finds itself in a weird spot, but certainly all of these bans are no good, especially the ones that make it even worse to me are the ones where it's like, yeah, the people in these states can own guns, like, oh yeah, you can own a gun at 18 but you can't carry it.
Yeah, and of course, why would you do that?
It's federal law that really craps that up, because federal law makes getting a handgun a 21-year-old thing, which is just ridiculous. It has never made sense. Of course, handguns are more precluded to be used in crime, yeah, whatever. And when it comes to carrying them, it's the thing that you're most likely to be needing to defend yourself with, because we can't be expecting all 18-year-olds to walk around with long guns. And the Supreme Court has said a bunch of times now that states have to allow either concealed or open carry to be an option, and eventually they're going to have to square that reality with with these up and coming rulings and after Bruin, where they're like, yeah, 18-year-olds have a right to keep and bear arms. Like, how novel is that? Adults have rights. That eventually they're going to have to square the inconsistency there with the federal law saying you have to be 21 to buy a handgun, but all of
which how did that ever go through?
It's very weird, but I think that's going to be another thing that gets adjusted before too long here, where the Supreme Court says you have to allow your right to carry open or concealed. But then if the federal government says, 18 to 21-year-olds, you can't actually buy a handgun. Right. That's of course the federal government will say, they can buy it third party or whatever, but no, because you want to make that even still as hard as possible. So, save us the grief.
No, you have to jump through our funny maze. Look, you can get it over here.
I think eventually that will be squared in the courts. Perhaps. And I have to imagine the way that gets squared is before too long, 18-year-olds will be full adults.
That's another thing that makes it difficult, is because the cases always wind up getting mooted because these people age out. Yes, which is another reason Article 3 was a mistake in our Constitution.
The courts are a little bit stupid in that regard.
Everything is stupid, and I hate this world. Moving on.
Oh, hang on. So we have game theory real quick with our article.
Oh, and guys, sorry I'm sniffling this whole time. And that's also one of the other reasons I've been so quiet. As soon as the trial was done, I got an intense sinus and respiratory infection that made it almost impossible for me to speak. I still sound a little stupid, but yeah, I'm sniffling and being dumb on the camera. So what were you saying?
So game theory wise, what the government should do is impose a tax of 100% of income for people between the ages of 40 in 1 month and 40 in 2 months, right? Because Article 3 is going to absolutely demolish them trying to say you can't do that. That's what. I'm game theorying this for us side, right? Our side. I'm not giving this to the government, because what a state government needs to do that wants to demolish Article 3's utility, a state government needs to impose this law and then have it get challenged, right? Because it lays Article 3 more or less on its face bare for how stupid it is,
right?
Or say that it's legal to murder people between the ages of 40 in 0 seconds and 40 in 1 second. Like if you nail that window in time, it's perfectly legal. And then have somebody challenge that and say, no, you can't do that. And then you have somebody try and moot it, I'm in danger because the state government said I'm in danger.
Right. But the problem is, there is the doctrine. There's a couple doctrines to get around this, but they apply them so narrowly, right? This is what happened in the abortion cases. It's the doctrine of capable of repetition and evading review.
Right.
But they're so hesitant to engage with it. I think that I say this all the time, standing requirements are just far too stringent. I think that And lawyers and law professors will say, "Oh, but then there will be a flood of litigation. Everyone will be able to sue for any reason." Well, guess
Who cares? Who cares?
Hey, also, one, who cares? Two, nothing actually stops you from bringing the lawsuit when you lack standing, which is like half of the cost of the lit. So, if you're defending, it's getting rid of it, assuming it doesn't go all the way, right? Most things settle out, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Except for the government, who would have to actually stand and face all of the dumb stuff that they do that they shouldn't.
Jobs and be efficient. Oh no!
Right? Yeah, and stop it and stop violating our rights so hard. So yeah, we got a good Florida story now coming up. Man cites Florida's new gun law after accidental discharge in Flannigans' bathroom.
It happens. I remember the last time that happened to me.
Yeah, this is a man who may have nearly shut off his wang in a Flannigans bar bathroom in Surfside.
What an opening.
It starts. Allegedly tried to justify carrying his pistol without a license by citing Florida's new soon-to-be-implemented permitless carry law.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So yeah, he didn't know that it wasn't actually in effect. It doesn't take effect till July 1st. Why did they put the most horrible ads on these things? But yeah, so this Flanagan blunder is actually one in several incidents of people firing guns by accident in the Miami area restaurants. So on April 25th, a man suffered life-threatening injuries after shooting himself outside a restaurant at the Dadeland Mall. Yeah, the incident was proved to be an accident. In late February, an off-duty Miami-Dade police officer's gun went off. Look how they word that differently. No, yes. He tagged himself while he was dining at Sushi Maki in Coral Gables. Last November, a Homeland Security agent tagged himself and his friend at a wine tasting event in Nottingham Gourmet Market in Doral. Police say the agent got up from the table when his gun fell to the floor and went off, striking him and his friend in their legs. That's good.
Interesting. That's interesting.
I mean, poor friend, but whatever. All right, speaking of poor friends, you should become poor by spending all of your money at the MAF Corporation. MAF Corporation has nice things. They got all the stuff. We've talked about it many times. You got the promotional code FRA, and it'll give you a discount. There is a new thing for people who are, a serial number tag that can be engraved with whatever you want and inserted with a heat set. That's a cool one. Some people got to do like the form one or whatever they're going to do. It's available. It's only $15. Comes lasered and engraved. And then there's other things. Go check it out. Emergency handguard liquidation is available for sale. We got the t-shirts. We got, the vending machine. We got the Magic ATF ball. Go to the website, maf-arms.com. Promotional code Foxtrot Romeo November. And be sure to subscribe to the MAF Titter Bird to find the new deal.
New deals.
All right. All right. It's your time to shine.
That's true.
We got an article by our friend Jonathan Crump, Mr. Jonathan H. Crump, famed artist on YouTube, painter. Federal judge blocks Illinois assault weapon ban. You want to take it away?
Yeah, the Fudge did it. So we more or less knew this was coming after after at the oral arguments. Yeah. The judge was making up arguments on the fly. We knew that the state was in trouble. But so the injunction did finally come down. It came down. Of course, I guess I'll give a number because I don't know when this will be uploaded exactly. It came down on the 28th of April, and so gave us a freedom weekend. I know my local gun store was like line out the door. Most local gun stores around the state, depending on where's local to you, was a similar stories that I'd heard. Like, gun stores stopped letting people get in line at noon because they knew paperwork was going to take till the end of the day, which is just crazy because people were waiting in their cars and taking numbers and like just a crazy thing. And people were selling out of ARs and you couldn't find mags. So they knew there was a run on guns, which is kind of fun. And of course, Palmetto State Armory let orders come in, these sorts of things. So lots of guns being sold. The judge handed down this injunction. It enjoined most of the things that were implemented in this ban, but not quite everything. So like the red flag laws being able to be extended a year is still in effect. Not that the state police are going to start using red flag laws. They'd just prefer people shoot places up whenever they're referred to them. But the assault weapons and magazine and 50 caliber also part of the bans are enjoined for now. The state, of course, didn't like this. The state immediately rushed to ask the judge to stay this injunction while they're, because they announced their intent to appeal, and they asked the judge to do a stay of this injunction while they're doing their big appeal to the circuit court. The judge responded to that this morning, the 3rd. Now, he responded to that on the 3rd and said, I'm going to give the plaintiffs a week to respond to that, to respond to the state saying that they want the thing stayed. And then the state broke the federal rule of procedure and has now asked the Circuit Court of Appeals, for an emergency stay on this injunction, which is like very improper. You're not really supposed to break the federal rule of procedure. Like whenever you ask one judge for one thing, you're not supposed to go ask a different higher judge for the same thing. Like you're supposed to wait until you get an answer for the first question you asked. But the state doesn't actually care. They're just going to break the rules and do what they want. But the thing that they actually asked in this emergency in this emergency request is very interesting. So if you remember before, we sort of talked about way back whenever the lawsuits were first getting going, the state said that there's no functional difference when it comes to the constitutionality of an AR-15 and an M16. So being a semi-auto gun and a full auto gun, they said that it's the same. They're both designed for warfare because semi-auto is it's not constitutionally distinct from full auto in that regard, which was a very bold thing of them to say. Well, now once this injunction comes down, I'm sure what the state is sort of realizing is, we did an oopsie. And so now they're running
a big oops.
Now they're running screaming to the circuit court, and the thing that they're complaining about is, well, we need this emergency stay because this injunction poses a serious threat to federal machine gun regulations. Like, yeah, idiots, whose fault is that? You absolute buffoon!
Oh well. Look what you did.
You are the ones who argued it's not constitutionally distinct. Why don't you lay down in this little bed that you've made all nice and cute and go to sleep?
What a nice bed. I think I'd like to cuddle up next to you, government. They're like, what are you doing?
The everything will be ongoing, and I guess because this federal rule of procedure has been broken, we're not sure exactly when we'll know if this stay is sticking around. On the 8th of this month is when the judge who issued the injunction is set to rule on if he will grant this stay in light of appeal.
Right.
But it seems very like reading his brief was excellent, by the way. Even if you're not a super law person, it was fairly not confusingly worded as far as these things go. But he essentially smacked the state down hard. The most banger line out of the whole thing is he said that it was evident to him that the state did not consider constitutional rights at all in passing the ban, which is that's not the thing the state wants to see a judge saying.
Right.
And so maybe the state didn't think they'd get smacked down this hard, but they're like sort of doing a chicken with its head cut off run around dance, like panicking so quickly getting to the court. And some of that may have to do with the fact that they're worried that this massive run on guns that's happened since the injunction dropped is not going to play out well for them from a standpoint of because another thing that they've been trying to hang their argument on is that sales numbers of AR-15s can't possibly be used to actually tell you how common they are, which is insane. Because it makes perfect sense. Is there a better metric? I don't know if
this makes sense to me, I think.
And so they're kind of off the rails in that regard, and I'm sure they're now afraid that they've hung a lot of weight on that argument, and I'm sure they don't want to see sales numbers be 100,000 of these things sold in a weekend isn't going to go well for them. That's
it won't
really bad.
Make a difference. I don't think.
And so it's certainly exciting, and there's more updates to come. But for now, the big bad parts of the ban are in. I spent an unhealthy amount of money over the weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, ordered some magazines and stuff just out of principle, and then there were a couple websites that wouldn't sell threaded barrels even because the like the nitty gritty of the ban was really bad, because much like Washington's ban that they just passed, it bans parts that could be used to make something into an assault weapon. So a threaded barrel on its own, a trigger for an AR-15 on its own, right. And the like sort of the ultimate weakness, or I guess flaw, of the Illinois ban, which is something that I pointed out to you well before the ban passed, but didn't want to say publicly. I didn't want to point out the holes in their ban. The high capacity magazine thing includes a magazine that you can put an extension on.
Right.
They didn't exempt magazines that are permanently affixed to non-assault weapons. So a Remington 870, all of them can take magazine extensions that cost like $20. Amazon sells them, right?
Yep.
Every single Remington 870 is a high capacity magazine on its own. You cannot use a Remington 870 to hunt on state land or land that's otherwise open to the public. They banned hunting with Remington 870s. It's insane. And so that was fine. Sort of like, that was one of their ultimate flaws, is like, there's like 40, 50 million 870s in the country. There's a lot of them. And they have now said that nobody in any state can have them anywhere in public. It can only be at private, closed to the public shooting ranges. And so like they messed up other things that bad in the ban. But like the 871 was like, as I was reading through the ban, I was like, well, hang on. Oh my God. They've inadvertently banned the 870, these fools. And so that did come out in these court cases. I think it was Todd Vandermine, who's got a YouTube channel. If you guys want to check it out, he's stays up to date with these sorts of things. His videos can be a little bit hard to watch, a little bit rambly at times, but he does have all. I don't know what
that's. I've never done a rambly video.
Yeah, we don't do that here. We haven't been going for an hour.
No,
but he's got all the information on a timely basis, and his YouTube channel is Freedom's Steel.
Whoa!
It's a picture of a bulldozer, because I think he's building a shooting range. It looks like he's building a shooting range with the shape of the earth he's moving with his bulldozer. That's fun. He's a pretty cool guy, and you can keep up to date with stuff on Illinois wise if you want. Like if you want play by play, he does play by play.
All right. Cool. Sweet. Last up. Patriot Patch Company is patriotpatch.co. Patriot Patch is custom designed patches, apparel, and accessories for any freedom-loving individual. And they're a good company because they keep getting banned from social media. You can join the Patch of the Month Club. And, this is cute. The May exclusive. It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God such men lived. Don't be sad because it's over. Be happy because the M1 carbine happened.
You're gonna get canceled for that one.
Wait, why?
that's the Rhodesia thing.
It is?
I mean,
no, it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a general thing.
People attribute it to Rhodesia, though.
They do?
Yeah. Like that's where I learned it was on Weekend Gun It specifically.
I think you're the one who's thinking about Rhodey stuff.
Yeah, it might be. I've been exposed. Now I'm canceled.
You gotta.
No, I hate the FAL. FAL's bad gun. G3 is better gun. There, I'm absolved.
Okay, all right. Anyway, patriotbatch.co, promotional code TWIG10. You're going to get 10% off. You can purchase the patch, the stickers, the signs, the cleaning mats, the accessories, the sale, and the wholesale. It's all available on patriotbatch.co. They have supported the show for the longest time, and so you should check it out and be nice to them. Anyway, guys, that is it for this current broadcast. And as always, we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.